What's up everybody and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. Like many of you, I grew up with the legend, either in cartoon form or in real life film, so when I heard that a new Tarzan was going to be made, I was pretty excited. I have to admit that the nostalgia factor was kicking in for me, as my real introduction to Tarzan was watching Godzilla movies on Saturday Sushi Cinema. Now, I know those things don't really go together, but hey, that's when I first saw Tarzan and I saw the serials that they showed in between the Godzilla movies. Now granted, the stories were overly simplistic as they only lasted 5 minutes, but they were still entertaining as hell, and it made me have a real appreciation for the character of Tarzan. So did this film do the legend justice, or was it a typical Hollywood cash grab? Let's take a closer look. So I will say this about the movie. It started out initially with so much promise. It was very interesting. I really liked the premise. We get the perspective of a Tarzan who's returned back to the civilized world and is kind of trying to stay away from the legend that he ultimately became. Unfortunately, this film falls flat on its ass 20 minutes into the movie. If I had to summarize this movie in a few words, I would say inconsistent as hell in terms of story, character development, and plot. But it's not all bad, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. First of all, let's talk about the characters. So Alexander Skarsgård plays John Clayton / Tarzan, and unfortunately his performance is stiff and dry to say the least. I mean, I don't know what the hell happened. He only has 2 settings in the movie. Either he's looking off into the distance confused, or he's emoting with his head to the side looking confused. I'm not sure if he realized he was on set. I will say this though, the guy's handsome as shit, not to mention super ripped, and he looks fantastic. But other than that, there's no substance that he brings to this character. And here's the thing too, I think the director realized that he wasn't bringing too much to the character, and they severely limited his screen time, so you don't actually see that much of Tarzan. Another major issue is that he has absolutely no chemistry with the rest of the cast. There was one fleeting moment with Samuel L. Jackson which actually made me laugh, but apart from that, nothing else. And finally, in terms of the chemistry that he's supposed to have with his love interest, Margot Robbie, that was simply non-existent. I couldn't believe that these two were a couple. It just didn't work. I do gotta give props to Margot Robbie though. She was definitely the badass in this film. I think that the roles should have been reversed. I think that Margot Robbie should have played Tarzan, and Jane should have been played by Alexander Skarsgård. I mean, the title of the movie is The Legend of Tarzan, right? I'm not wrong about that. And you have Margot Robbie really stealing the show in terms of taking on the bad guys and really stealing scenes away from the rest of the actors. It was pretty incredible. I mean, let me put it to you this way. If Tarzan hadn't been in this film and it would have just been a movie about Jane, Margot Robbie's character, I don't think that you would have missed anything. It actually might have been a better movie, and that's pretty sad to say. Now, as you know, Samuel L. Jackson is also in the movie, and he really carries the film. He's actually probably the saving grace of this movie. And to be honest with you, he's the only real character that I believed in terms of what they were motivated to do and the reason that they returned to the jungle. Samuel L. Jackson's character is supposed to be a secondary character, but he quickly takes center stage. He's actually much more fleshed out in this film, and the reason that he's doing the things that he's doing is very interesting. Now, remember I told you that there was really no chemistry on the set between the characters? Something very peculiar happens in the movie. Samuel L. Jackson's character is giving a very poignant story as to why he's here and why he's compelled to help out in Africa. And Alexander Skarsgård's character just kind of stares off into space, and he keeps emoting. I mean, he doesn't react to it at all. It was a very bizarre scene and completely threw me out of the movie. Now, Christopher Waltz is a magnificent actor, but I honestly don't know what he was doing in this film because he was so wasted and his character was extremely one-dimensional. After a while, I didn't even know what his motivation was. It kind of fell flat. And this leads me to yet another bizarre and out-of-place scene between him and Margot Robbie's character. It's pretty clear what the director was trying to do. They were trying to have that kind of Quentin Tarantino witty banter between two characters to establish how evil his character really was. Unfortunately, it fell flat on its face and it didn't work. I think the director realized that it wasn't working and then quickly rushed to the end of that scene. It was so weird, and all it really did was set up a plot device which was in and of itself very ridiculous. Now, let's talk about some of the things that I found that were extremely inconsistent about the movie. Let's first talk about the visuals. There are certain times in this movie where it looks absolutely beautiful, even breathtaking at times when you see the vast expanses of Africa, and then there's other times where it looks absolutely horrible and you can tell that it's a green screen. And I'm not just talking about any normal kind of bad. Do you remember King Kong? That particular scene where everybody was being chased by those brontosauruses? Yeah, it's that freaking bad. Trust me, you have to see it to really appreciate how bad it is. YouTube it. Also, Tarzan's powers or abilities seem to also be very inconsistent. I mean, in one scene, he's being pounded into the ground by a gorilla, an 800-pound gorilla, and he gets up like if nothing. And then in another scene, he's getting thwarted by a freaking crucifix that you would probably buy at a swap shop. I mean, what the hell? I mean, I don't know if this was intended or not, but towards the end of the film, I think even Samuel L. Jackson gets a little annoyed about his abilities, what he can and can't do. It's really funny. He starts making a bunch of faces like, what the fuck, man? Also, towards the end of the movie, it went from semi-serious film to extremely cartoony. I'm talking about Lion King cartoony. And finally, the climax of this film was so freaking predictable that I saw it coming from my days when I was watching Sushi Cinema in the Godzilla movies. And all it did was made me wonder, why the hell didn't you just do this in the first place, man? Overall, guys, this wasn't a horrible film, and in some aspects it was pretty entertaining, especially with the performances by Margot Robbie and Samuel L. Jackson. But ultimately, it's kind of a forgettable film and really not necessary in my opinion. Alright guys, so that's my official review on The Legend of Tarzan 2016 version. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.